All right, everybody. So today we're going to talk about integer operations using color counters. We're going to go through a little PowerPoint slide. All right, so we're going to have positive color counters are going to be represented with yellow, and negatives are going to be represented with red. We're going to look over some problems. We're going to have adding integers first. We're going to have a positive 1 plus positive 3. First thing we're going to do, we're going to put one positive on the positive side. Second thing we're going to do, we're going to add 3 more positives to the positive side. And the conclusion to this is going to be that we are left with 4 positive color counters. I know this is pretty straightforward and easy for the first one, but it's going to get a little more complicated. So what we're going to have here, we're going to have a negative 1 plus a positive 7. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our negative color counter on the right side where our negatives are in our table. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add 7 positives. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to make a 0 pair. A 0 pair is when you have an instance of a positive and negative that essentially cancel each other out. So if we put a positive 1 and a negative 1, what those are going to do is they're going to make a 0. And we call it a 0 pair. So what was our answer going to be here? Well, if we take away a positive and a negative 1, all that we're left over here is 6 positives. All right, so we're going to start out with positive 6 plus negative 2. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put up our 6 positive counters, followed by adding our 2 negative counters. Then we're going to match up our 0 pairs for our 2 negatives with 2 positives. So we're going to have 1 0 pair here and 1 0 pair here. So our answer, what we'll be left with, once we take away our 0 pairs, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 positives. All right, we'll do a few more of these. So if we have a positive 7 minus a positive 5, what's that going to look like? Is it going to be the same, or we're just going to have 2 positives? We're going to have to look at it. See, let's see. So we put up our 7 positives, and then we're going to subtract 5 positives. If we're subtracting 5 positives, isn't that the same thing as taking away 5? Minus 5. It's just 7 minus 5. If you look at that here, we just have positive 7 minus positive 5. That's essentially just subtracting. We're just taking 7 minus 5. That's nothing new, nothing we haven't learned in the past. We are left with just 1, 2. Guys, don't get tripped up on this. Just because we have positives over here doesn't mean this is suddenly something that's crazy and new and different than what you've learned in the past. This is just positive 7 or just 7 minus 5. All right, so now we're going to have 1 minus 2. Well, the thing is here, do we have 2 to take away? We don't, do we? So what's going to happen here? If I take away 2, but I only have 1, it's going to push me in the negative direction, isn't it? So what can I add that will not change the value? 0 pair. I add a positive and a negative counter. So now we're going to subtract the 2 positives. So I'm taking away positive 2. And what am I going to be left with here? Now I'm only going to be left with that negative that I brought over. So my answer is going to be negative 1. All right, so let's see here. So now we got a negative 5 minus positive 2. So I'm going to start out by putting up my negative 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. And I have to take 2 positives away. But I don't have any positives. But I can do that same thing I did in the last one, can't I? I'm going to add 0 pairs. So now I've added my 2 positives, haven't I? But in doing that, I've added 2 negatives as well. So now I'm going to subtract my two positives away. And what will I be left with? Well, let's count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 negatives. Fairly simple and easy. All right, so now we're looking at multiplication here. With multiplication, we're going to have a number of groups. So we have two groups. Our first multiplier here is going to be the number of groups. The second one is going to be how many are in each group. So if you look right here, I have 1, 2 groups of 3. One group, two groups. And in each one there is 3 tiles. So what do I have for my answer? I just count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My answer is positive 6. All right, so now I have a positive 3 times a negative 3. So I'm going to have 3 groups of negative 3. So I have 3 groups of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I just count them up, and I end up with a negative 9. Pretty simple stuff there, right? As long as you guys can understand that the first one is your number of groups, and the second one is the number in each group. All right, so let's look at this one more time. So we're going to have number of groups is 2, and how many are in each group is 4. So first put 2 groups of positive 4. One group, 2 groups. Second, since there is a negative in front of the groups, we have to flip our color counters to the negatives. That's what this little inverse right here is. What does inverse mean? Inverse means the opposite. So if we have negative, the opposite of negative is positive. So if we have positive 4, the opposite of positive 4 is negative 4. That's why we end up with negative 8 counters left. And our answer ends up being negative 8. All right, same thing here. We got the inverse of negative 2. But first thing, we got to make 3 groups of negative 2. One group, 2 groups, 3 groups. Now, the inverse means the opposite. So we are going to do what? Flip them. Our negative counters are now going to become positive counters. And we got our answer. Count them up, and we're done. Positive 6. All right, let's see here. So you guys are going to try this one by yourself, and then we will check it as a class. If you guys need to go back, rewind this, look it over again and again and again, it's here for you. Go back, double check, see what we did. Compare one we did just before, this one to this one, see how we did it. Come back to this one and see if you did it correctly. All right, guys, thanks. See you in just a second.